Welcome back to New Rockstars. I'm Eric Voss, and this is a breakdown of 2010's Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows Part 1, the 7th entry in our weekly Harry Potter Rewatch series. We went through this film shot by shot for all the Easter eggs, the book details, and just deeper layers of meaning that you might have missed. And if you are interested in helping New Rockstars do more of these kind of rewatch series, we now have a channel membership. For now, we're starting small when it comes to the perks, but if you are able to and you want to rock some really cool emotes in the comments, this is just a really great way to keep us making these kind of in-depth rewatch analyses. Okay, from darkness we hear the sound described by the closed captioning as metal creaking. This actually is a song of the Locket Horcrux, the faction of Voldemort's soul that most haunts Harry and his friends in this film. We actually hear it make this sound later in the film. As we glide through the rusting metallic locket of a Warner Brothers logo, we hear a high-pitched shriek that also accompanies the locket throughout this film and the way it gets under the bearer's skin. Now, we had heard this sound effect already over the shot of Marvel Gaunt's ring and the diary in the previous film. It's the sound of not just evil, but the pain that evil sacrificed to try to cheat death. This Locket Horcrux, which once belonged to Tom Riddle's mother, Merope, according to the books, was turned into a Horcrux by Riddle by sacrificing some unknown Muggle tramp. And I just find it interesting how, of all the Horcruxes we spend time with in these movies, this Locket seems to be the most resilient, the one that gives Harry and the others the most trouble. This whole movie, as the mere first half of a two-part story that Rowling didn't intend to be divided, at times feels like a maddening chunk of metal that forces us to bear with it. It gives us no warmth of comfort of Hogwarts and leaves us feeling 3 steps back. But that's also what I really like about this movie. The Locket Horcrux shriek mixes with single notes of Hedwig's theme, like a toy music box winding down, and mixes then with Nagini's Parseltongue hisses, and then it all comes to an abrupt halt. On the cold eyes of Bill Nighy as new Minister of Magic Rufus Scrimgeour. Rufus took over for Fudge shortly after the events of Order of the Phoenix. This close-up of his face shows little twitches of his facial muscles and a layer of sweat upon his upper lip to betray his projected confidence.
Your ministry remains strong.
The flashbulbs go off in the same spot where they photographed Harry and Dumbledore in the opening shot of Half-Blood Prince, and we saw how that was a foreshadowing firing squad for them, as it will be for poor old Rufus, who won't make it out of this story. The Daily Prophet headlines read, "Dark Mark sparks panic," with an image of the Dark Mark over Hogwarts after Dumbledore's murder. Other headlines read, 500 galleons for any information regarding Death Eaters, an interestingly small amount compared to the 10,000 galleons they offer for Harry later. Violence spreads, Muggle family murdered, accompanied by a photo of a family that you'll notice remains stationary, since the Prophet likely took this photo from a non-magical newspaper. Then Death Eater numbers grow, and then Rufus Scrimgeour holds emergency meeting with Muggle Prime Minister. This meeting was actually detailed in the first chapter of Half-Blood Prince, the other minister. And at the bottom of the paper, we see E. Limus, page 6. Graphic artist Eduardo Lima's name Easter egg for this installment, as he's done for all the previous films. This Muggle death is what convinces Hermione to take her drastic measure with her parents. Meanwhile, on Privet Drive, the Dursleys pack their car, and Dudley carries his boxing gear, but in a deleted scene hints at a warmer relationship that is formed between the cousins.
I don't think you're a waste of space.
Thanks. See you, Big D.
Another deleted scene allowed Fiona Shaw a shining moment as Petunia and sets up Godric's Hollow as a coming destination.
If they think for a moment you know where I'm going, they'll stop at nothing.
Do you think I don't know what they're capable of? You didn't just lose a mother that night in Godric's Hollow, you know. I lost a sister.
And a third deleted scene would have shown Ron with the radio he has throughout this film.
There for the Order. So many on the run, keeps them connected with the rest of us.
So Hermione performs the Obliviate memory charm on her parents, who are played in this film by Ian Kelly and Michelle Fairley, Catelyn Stark on Game of Thrones. And this is heartbreaking. In the book, Hermione just charms her parents temporarily to make them think that they're Wendell and Monica Wilkins and that they don't have any children. J.K. Rowling actually said that Hermione finds her parents after this, vacationing in Australia a year later, and restores their memories. And they are here in this scene watching some TV program about Australia. But this Obliviate is a implied to be permanent. It erases a real young Emma Watson who has been spliced into photos with these parents, even down to some photos being transformed into framed photos of nothing, which makes no sense. Like, dentist wife, why did we frame a photo of this wall? I don't know, dentist husband, I was obliviated to the point of insanity. But it does inform Hermione's intensity this film and her growing closeness with Harry. While Ron still has his parents, both Harry and Hermione are in effect orphans. Snape's arrival to Malfoy Manor is the first chapter of the Deathly Hallows book, where he walks up, but here he flies. Snape is one of two characters of the book who can fly, along with Voldemort, but in the films, all the Death Eaters can. Production designer Stuart Craig designed Malfoy Manor with Jacobean features inspired by Hardwick Hall in Derbyshire. Inside, the halls have stairs that twist in various directions like an MC Escher sketch, and the floor is dusty as the manor has gone downhill since the Malfoys lost their house elf Dobby. Around the table are Bellatrix Lestrange, Wormtail, the Malfoys Lucius, Narcissa, and Draco, Antonin Dolohov, and Thorfinn Rowell. They are the two who attack the trio in the diner later. Corbin Yaxley, Pius Thickness. He is the head of the Department of Magical Law Enforcement, and in the book, Yaxley put him under the Imperius Curse to get him to serve Voldemort, and there's a little detail later in this film that indicates that he might be under the Imperius Curse here. There's also Amicus Caro and his sister Electo. Now, Yaxley actor Peter Mullen would go on to play big roles in Ozark and Westworld and in Rings of Power. Thickness actor Guy Henry would go on to do the physical performance of Grand Moff Tarkin in Rogue One. The woman suspended above the table is Charity Burbage, the Hogwarts Muggle Studies teacher. We saw her in Half-Blood Prince sitting right next to Severus Snape at the staff table. Voldemort says,
Severus, I was beginning to worry you had lost your way.
An obvious double meaning here for the double agent. Snape reports that Harry will be relocated on the Saturday after next, and looking at calendars of July 1997, that would be July 26th. Yaxley says his source, the Auror Dawlish, says that it'll be on the 30th, but Snape, following the orders of Dumbledore's portrait to prove himself a more loyal spy than the other rival lieutenants to Voldemort, had confounded Mundungus Fletcher to get this information. And by telling Voldemort, Snape knows that some members of the Order might die here, but he does attend the ambush later and does what he can to help in the crossfire. There is a scream from down below. This is Ollivander, the wand maker whom Voldemort kidnapped, both to find out how to overcome the problem of the twin cores that he and Harry's wands share, and later to pump for info about the Elder Wand. Voldemort takes Lucius's wand, humiliating him by snapping the silver snake head off of it, foreshadowing what will happen to the Horcrux present in this scene, Nagini, when Neville steps up in part 2. We later learn that since Voldemort didn't win Lucius's wand, but rather it was surrendered in this trembling terror, amazingly performed by Jason Isaacs, that because wands choose their wizards, Voldemort does not have as strong of a connection to Lucius's wand. Burbage begs Snape, Severus, please. These are the same final words of Albus Dumbledore, and Snape here cannot flinch, despite this being a longtime work colleague. Draco does wince at seeing another teacher die before his eyes. The Death Eaters all recoil their hands from the table as Nagini slithers down toward us and lunges at the camera. Harry Potter looks into a broken shard of mirror glass. This actually came from the Order of the Phoenix book. It was part of a two-way mirror that Sirius had gifted Harry in order to stay in touch, and had Harry thought to use this earlier in that story, he could have avoided walking into Voldemort's trap in the Ministry, leading to Sirius's death. He did try to use this mirror to contact Sirius after it all went down, and it didn't work, so Harry shattered it in his trunk. Now Harry thinks he sees Dumbledore's piercing blue eyes, but we will learn in part 2 is actually Albus's brother Aberforth, who has the sister mirror. Harry's research notebook is open to a page with all these notes about Horcruxes. What Regulus wrote, I know I'll be dead long before you read this, then R.A.B., then was he/she working alone, witch or wizard, then initials might not be just one person, did they only know about one Horcrux, and then like A, B, R, different orders of the letters, and then a big number 7, obviously for 7 Horcruxes, and then on the opposite page on the left, listings on the diary, the ring, and the locket, and the text damaged by Fang of Basilisk, because Basilisk venom is one known thing that can destroy Horcruxes. There's the fake locket that Regulus Black swapped in the cave, and the Daily Prophet with Albus Dumbledore's obituary written by Elphius Doge, Order of the Phoenix member and friend of Dumbledore, whom helped escort Harry in Order of the Phoenix. In that obituary, Doge writes how Albus's father had been arrested for the murder of 3 Muggles when Albus was only 10, and other details about his mother, sister, and brother, but mostly focuses on the good. Still, Harry, knowing little about his mentor's life, leaves him with doubts about his quest. Harry takes one last look at the bedroom he can remember in his cupboard under the stairs. He looks at his old hand-me-down soldier toys, and only one remains standing, saber outstretched in a fencing posture, like a wizard dueling with a wand, surrounded by the bodies of his fallen toy comrades, foreshadowing how Harry will feel during the Battle of Hogwarts. When Harry opens the door to Hagrid and Ron, Hedwig gives an excited little yay!
Hello, Harry.
Hermione is there, Mad-Eye Moody, Kingsley Shacklebolt, and Bill Weasley, who's now married to Fleur Delacour. In the films, this is the first time Bill and Harry meet, but in the books, they had met long before this. Bill is played by Donald Gleeson, son of Brendan Gleeson, Mad-Eye Moody, and Bill says he got scarred by Fenrir Greyback, which happens at the end of the Half-Blood Prince book. Fred and George Weasley are there with their father Arthur, and Remus Lupin and Nymphadora Tonks, now married, and Tonks nearly announces that she's pregnant before Moody cuts her off. Lupin and Tonks having a baby enrages Harry in the book because he's reminded of how his own parents fought in the First Wizarding War and left him as an orphan. There's also Mundungus Fletcher. He was an OG member of the Order of the Phoenix, and in the Half-Blood Prince book, he stole items from Grimmauld Place and sold them until he was caught by Harry in Hogsmeade. Sometime after that, he was imprisoned in Azkaban for impersonating an Inferius, but he broke out shortly after, and now the Order doesn't really trust him, but kind of have to use him on this mission. The filmmakers like to start every one of these movies with an impressive bit of magic, a kind of how do they do that shot to draw the viewer back into the world. Here we get the 7 Harrys. Again, the number 7, always important. To achieve this visual effect, they shot with Daniel Radcliffe for 2 days doing each character, mirroring the movements and mannerisms of the real actor standing beside him. Radcliffe said,
You start to look at people in a very analytical way when you're kind of studying them. Like Rupert walks with a real wiggle in his hips. You know, it's actually quite a sexy walk.
So they use the mover facial capture with ultraviolet makeup that shows up under special lights. Radcliffe's face was filmed from all angles by 27 cameras at once, and the other actors gave faces as they transformed into Harry. The effects team then blended one from the other. On set, visual effects supervisor Tim Burke used body doubles for every Harry so that when you see a bunch of arms reaching in to take the clothes and stuff, they're all mostly the doubles arms. And there's some pretty clever blocking in the initial transformation. Fred and George are the first two, and they both drop down a foot in height because they're super tall, but then they position them right beside the shortest of them all, Mundungus. The one person in the room shorter than Harry. Yeah, I'm including Hermione and Fleur. Radcliffe is a short boy. So Mundungus inches up a bit, and by the time the camera pans around to Hermione, she has Radcliffe's full horrified face under her hair. As in the case of Chamber of Secrets, unlike the books, the Polyjuice potion in this scene does not change the voice. I suppose it's just to play up the humor of it, but it does contradict Barty Crouch Jr.'s Polyjuice potion completely changing his voice into Moody's and Goblet of Fire. We get a solid joke from Fred and George here.
Wow, we're identical.
Ron says,
I knew Ginny was lying about that tattoo.
This is a line from the book in a reference to Ginny saying that she told Romilda Vane that Harry had a huge tattoo of a Hungarian horntail across his chest in the Half-Blood Prince book. So real Harry goes with Hagrid in his souped up motorbike with the sidecar. They know the Death Eaters will expect the real Harry to be on a broom since he's such a good flyer, and that's where he feels most natural. But Mr. Weasley upgraded the motorbike as we saw in the Half-Blood Prince film. Hagrid reminds us that this is how Harry first arrived at Privet Drive, and we know this was originally Sirius Black's motorbike. It's all just so sad. In the first film, the motorbike was a white 1959 Triumph 650 T120 Bonneville, but in this film, it's a light blue Royal Enfield. Later in the film, a copy of Rosenbaum's motorcycle owner's manual was found in Sirius's bedroom, suggesting that the fictional motorbike was covered in that manual. Mad-Eye goes with Mundungus, both on brooms. On Thestrals behind Harry, Fleur Harry rides with Bill, nuzzling up into his back. On another Thestral, Hermione Harry rides with Kingsley. I'm pretty sure neither Fleur nor Hermione at this point had seen a death, so to them, they are mounted on an invisible creatures clinging for dear life. On brooms, Arthur escorts Fred Harry, Lupin escorts George Harry, and Tonks escorts Ron Harry, who turns back to smile at real Harry, and I so appreciate Radcliffe's subtle impression of Rupert Grint's sheepish smirk. Arthur's broom is outfitted with bicycle pedals and a bike bag on the back because of his muggle obsession. In the book, each fake Harry also had a stuffed white Hedwig owl in a cage, but here, Harry releases Hedwig at the beginning of the scene. The film wanted to give us one last fanning of the snowy owl's wings, like Dumbledore's owl lectern in Half-Blood Prince. Immediately, they fly into an ambush. It's a terrifying dogfight. Literally, we go from one frame at around 1611 through a puff of clouds, and then bam, dozens of flyers are suddenly there trying to kill each other. Actually, if you look closely, each fake Harry is matched with like 4 Death Eaters, and we don't know which Harry is which, but on a Thestral flies Kingsley, meaning the Harry on that back would be Hermione, and she lets off an impressive stupefy at the Death Eater behind her. All the while, again, from her point of view, she would be on an invisible mount and not knowing if that Thestral's wings would be about to flap up or down, yet she nails the target. Mad-Eye flies past, firing a stupefy behind him, and Harry tries to help, but only sees Mad-Eye using Protego from a stupefy on his right. This technically is the last shot we see of Mad-Eye alive during this battle, and it's presumed that he dies shortly after this, because Mundungus Harry had disapparated when Voldemort appeared, and a killing curse meant for Mundungus Harry hit Mad-Eye. Hagrid rockets them down onto a freeway. Harry hits one Death Eater with the stupefy. In the book, Harry hesitates using stupefy when they're in the aerial battle, because stunning at that height fight would mean certain death, and Harry just instinctively uses non-violent spells like Expelliarmus. And because he uses Expelliarmus, that's how they identify the real Harry in the book. Zipping through traffic, Harry finds himself in a scenario similar to riding in the Weasley's Ford Anglia, even hanging from the vehicle, and the night bus, weaving through the streets of London. And the souped-up motorbike has a few more features in the book. One button shoots a brick wall out the back that some Death Eaters smash into. Another blasts a net out of the back to trip some of them up. Hagrid gets stunned, though he shouldn't. In the book, he's so big and thick that most stunning spells don't work on him. But in the movie sequence logic, it sets up this heartbreak. Oh no, Hedwig! In the film, Hedwig's protection is how they know which Harry is the real one. I assume Hedwig wouldn't try to protect any of the other ones. She especially hates Ron after his shitty driving and chamber sequence rattled her cage. Like, hoot, fire away, Dolohov, hoot. So yes, Hedwig is our first major loss in Deathly Hallows, and damn, it hurts. Because it's been Hedwig's theme that accompanied every Harry Potter film, and really that music dies with her. And every time we hear that music, we think of her sacrifice. And now with the real Harry identified, Voldemort arrives, and Harry's wand works on its own to block the spell and destroy Lucius's Elm Dragon Heartstring wand. This happened because Voldemort has now tied himself to Harry twice. Once in 1981, when part of his soul went into baby Harry, and then again in Goblet of Fire when Harry's blood of the enemy forcibly taken was used to give Voldemort a new body. And Harry's wand recognized Voldemort's as both kin and threat and worked to neutralize that threat. In the book, Harry and Hagrid first stop at the home of the Tonks family and meet Ted Tonks and his wife Andromeda, sister to Bellatrix and Narcissa. Ted, a Muggle born, has to go on the run with Dean Thomas and Dirk Cresswell. But here they return to the Burrow. When Lupin lands with George, George's Polyjuice as Harry is still in effect, but when they cross the camera, you can see George is now taller with red hair in the same shot. George's ear has been cursed off by, it turns out, Severus Snape, using Sectum Sempra at a Death Eater, but it hit George by accident. Lupin confirms Harry's real status by asking him what creature sat in his office the first time Harry visited Lupin there. Harry answers Grindylow. Now, we didn't see a Grindylow in the Prisoner of Azkaban film, but a Grindylow is mentioned in the third book. Kingsley and Hermione arrive next, then Bill and Fleur, then Tonks and Ron. Hermione hugs Ron while he still looks like Harry, which I think is the first part of a bit of tension that we see in this film. Like Ron might be thinking, wait, who do you think you're hugging right now? Ron apparently saved Tonks.
I wouldn't be standing here without him. Really?
Always the tone of surprise.
This gets called back later with the roles reversed.
Undetectable extension charm.
You're amazing, you are.
Always the tone of surprise.
George quips that he's feeling like a saint or holy, which is also another way of saying hallowed or deathly, as someone has to be dead to be canonized as saint. Bill and Fleur report that Mad Eye died, which means that mid-battle, upon seeing Mad Eye die, Fleur suddenly saw a Thestral appear under her and Bill. In the book, everyone toasts Mad Eye in this moment, and Lupin and then Bill leave to retrieve his body, which connects to a detail from the Prisoner of Azkaban book and this Reddit observation that Trelawney's "When 13 Dine, the first to rise, the first to die" line during Christmas in Prisoner of Azkaban correctly predicts Lupin, in this instance, being the first of this group of 13 to die in the Battle of Hogwarts later. We should also note that tragically, the Death Eaters do get to Mad Eye's body first. His magical eye will later show up in Umbridge's door at the Ministry. Ugh, I hate that. Harry flashes back to memories as he sleeps. Mad Eye's final words, "Head for the Burrows!" The flashbulbs on Harry and Dumbledore in the Ministry, the opening shot of Half-Blood Prince, the Resurrection Stone with the Deathly Hallows symbol on the gaunt ring as Dumbledore says, "This is beyond anything I imagine" in Half-Blood Prince. Slughorn exclaiming 7 in Half-Blood Prince, and Teenage Tom first bringing up the term Horcrux. Harry finding Regulus's fake locket in the cave. Harry saying, "They could be anything." Slughorn asking Tom, "I'd want to break the soul into 7 pieces." Dumbledore holding the destroyed diary, and Dumbledore's arm around Harry again. Voldemort had blocked out Harry with occlumency in Half-Blood Prince, but now he is losing its grip, and Harry witnesses Voldemort torturing Ollivander for telling him that using a different wand on Harry would work. On the day of Bill and Fleur's wedding, we see a Daily Prophet. Dumbledore's dark secrets revealed. Rita Skeeter launches new book. Side column, Rita Skeeter interviewed by Betty Braithwaite. Also at the top, 21.4% off Rita's hit sensation. At the bottom, Dumbledore remembered by Elphia's Doge, which is a defense piece shoved all the way to the bottom corner. Actually, the prop from Mina Lima also includes Death Eater recruits on the rise and Aurors killed by mysterious poisoning. You can also see some of the text of Braithwaite's interview, hinting at Dumbledore's drama with his father, his brother, his sister, all covered in Rita's tell-all, published by the same publisher of the Daily Prophet. So this movie gives us just a bit of the relationship between Harry and Ginny Weasley, with Harry zipping up her dress here, and then their kiss, but they shoot the kiss at this awkward angle so we don't really see anything. There's like no chemistry here. Steve Klove's script focuses more on Harry and Hermione's chemistry, and what some book readers accuse to be an implicit shipping Hermione bias. But really, I think it just comes out of a misunderstanding of Ginny from the books. Like in the Deathly Hallows books, Ginny, on Harry's 17th birthday, pulls him up to her room where Harry looks around to see all of her awesome Quidditch posters and appreciates how she's like a tomboy who grew up with only brothers and doesn't get weepy, and then she gifts him a kiss of a lifetime to remember her by. That makes him feel like he was filled with fire whiskey. And Harry does remember Ginny throughout the book. He's thinking about her constantly. He's longing to re-feel Ginny's warmth. We get none of that in the movie. The version of Ginny written by Steve Kloves and played by Bonnie Wright unfortunately just never evolves past that shy, pining fangirl who approaches every scene like she's apologizing to be in Harry's presence. But that's not how it's supposed to be. Ginny is Molly Weasley's daughter. She's supposed to be pretty bossy and high status and awesome. Minister of Magic Rufus Scrimgeour visits to deliver Dumbledore's last will and testament, and when it unfolds, I love this prop. You can see that Dumbledore attached via wax a smaller addendum page, meaning that he updated the will recently. This is the page that details the bequeathed items to Ronald Bilious Weasley, Hermione Jean Granger, and Harry James Potter. Hermione's middle name was changed from Jane in the book to Jean in the movie to avoid similarity with Dolores Jane Umbridge. Dumbledore gifts Ron the Deluminator, the device Albus used on Privet Drive in the first film. This proves that Dumbledore knew that Ron would leave Harry and Hermione, but would also want to find a way back to them. Behind Ron on the shelf are wedding cards addressed to Bill and Fleur. In the book, both the extended families of the Delacours and the Weasleys stay with them, and it's pretty frustrating to Molly and Ginny. Dumbledore leaves Hermione the Tales of Beetle the Bard to help her figure out the Deathly Hallows. Ron mentions two of the stories in it, The Wizard and the Hopping Pot and Babbity Rabbity and her Crackling Stump. The Wizard and the Hopping Pot is about a kindly wizard who helped out Muggles. Upon his death, his cruel son refused to help the Muggles who came to him asking for it. His father's old cauldron sprouted every ailment he refused to cure until he agreed to help the Muggles. Babbity Rabbity and her Crackling Stump is about a con man who convinces a cruel king that he's a wizard and can teach him magic. A real witch, Babbity Rabbity, punishes both men for their cruelty and arrogance. Other known Beetle tales include The Fountain of Fair Fortune, The Warlock's Hairy Heart, and of course, The Tale of the Three Brothers. Dumbledore left Harry the first snitch Harry ever caught, and Rufus hands it to him carefully without touching it, and is disappointed when nothing happens. As Hermione points out later, snitches have flesh memory, but Harry didn't catch the snitch with his hand, he caught it with his mouth. Dumbledore had also left Harry the Sword of Gryffindor, but Rufus says that it's missing, and the sword would only appear to Harry anyway, it wouldn't be his property. In the book, Scrimgeour has hit up Harry multiple times, asking for him to be the poster boy for the Ministry in this wizarding war, and Harry refuses to share with the Minister his and Dumbledore's Horcrux quest, and he's right not to. The Ministry totally falls shortly after this. Now, in the book, for the wedding, Harry takes Polyjuice potion to look like a random Weasley cousin named Barney, but Luna is still able to see through it from his facial expression. Here, Luna says,
Got bitten by a garden gnome only moments ago.
Yes! Garden gnomes! This is a reference to the removed book scene in Chamber of Secrets where Harry and Ron de-gnome the garden by flinging them overhead as the gnomes are like, get off me! Rhys Ifans plays Xenophilius Lovegood, who shoves Harry's face close to his chest to whisper his support, giving Harry a close-up look at his Deathly Hallows necklace. In the book and some deleted scenes, Victor Krum is at the wedding, invited by Fleur, who got to know him during the Triwizard Tournament. He takes great offense at this symbol, claiming it belongs to the Dark Wizard Grindelwald, who attended Krum's Scandinavian school of Durmstrang and drew that symbol all over the walls there. Harry chats with Elphias Doge and Ron's great aunt Muriel Weasley, who tells Harry that magical historian Bathilda Bagshot, who knew Dumbledore from living in Harry's birthplace of Godric's Hollow, was the one who told Rita Skeeter about Dumbledore's family secrets. Doge says that it's a great betrayal, but we later learn in the book that Rita used Veritaserum on her. Later on in Deathly Hallows, we also learn from Aberforth that when their sister Ariana was 6, 3 Muggle boys caught her doing magic. She was too young to control it, and when she couldn't replicate it, they did terrible things to her, which destroyed her mind and turned her magic in on itself, causing it to burst out randomly. The Dumbledore family father, Percival, killed these boys, landing him in Azkaban, and Aberforth had to take care of Ariana while Albus was making a name for himself at Hogwarts. One day, Ariana's magic exploded, killing their mother, Kendra. Albus nixed his plans to travel the world with Elphias Doge, and instead moved back home to be the head of the household. There, he met Gellert Grindelwald, who had been expelled from Durmstrang for practicing dark magic, and was visiting Gellert's great aunt, Bathilda Bagshot, in Godric's Hollow. Albus and Gellert became very close and sought the Deathly Hallows and wanted to rule Muggles for the greater good, and Aberforth Aberforth confronted them on these creepy plans, and a fight broke out among the three. Grindelwald used the Cruciatus Curse on Aberforth, and Albus tried to stop him. One of their spells rebounded and accidentally killed Ariana. Grindelwald fled, and Aberforth blamed Albus, and that is why Albus Dumbledore said, "It was all my fault," while drinking the potion in the cave.
Thank you to BetterHelp for sponsoring this video. December has got everybody thinking of gifts. The best gifts are the gifts that keep on giving, the things that improve your life, not just once, but over and over again. Therapy can enrich your life by giving you a set of emotional tools you can use again and again and again. And to get started with therapy, there's really no easier way than BetterHelp. BetterHelp is a platform where therapists and their clients can communicate effectively so you can get the most out of therapy. They carefully make sure therapists on the platform are well qualified, and their customer support team is there to help you if you have any questions. Just fill out the questionnaire and you will match with a therapist in as little as a couple days. If the first therapist doesn't feel like the right fit, you can easily switch to another one until you find someone you really connect with. BetterHelp also provides a journal for personal reflection, plus group sessions on a variety of topics are available every day. Users love BetterHelp, and they have over 7,000 reviews and a 4.5 rating on Trustpilot. If you are struggling and think you'd benefit from a therapy session, click the link in the description or go to betterhelp.com/newrockstars and get 10% off your first month of therapy.
The wedding is interrupted by a message from Kingsley.
Ministry has fallen. Minister of Magic is dead.
In the book, this silvery orb is Kingsley's Patronus, a lynx, which is very cool. Death Eaters apparate in, the bald one who said, "You got that right," earlier, immediately Avada Kedavra is some poor wedding guest. Thorfinn Rowell is there. As Lupin pushes Harry to flee, behind him you could see Bill and Ginny in a duel with someone else as Bill blocks a stunning curse. Hermione apparates Harry and Ron to London's Piccadilly Circus. She packed a go bag with clothes and books and an undetectable extension charm in case they needed to bounce. They go to a diner where Dolohov and Rowell, dressed as workmen, find them immediately. How do they find them so fast? Well, the name Voldemort has a taboo jinx on it, as the Death Eaters know that only the Order of the Phoenix would be brave enough to say the name, and Dolohov and Rowell enter the diner within just a few seconds of Hermione saying Voldemort's here.
If Voldemort really has taken over the Ministry, then none of the old places are safe.
In the book, it takes the trio a while to figure out this taboo jinx, but Ron begs them to stop saying the name because he just feels there's something off about it. In this film, Harry does call him you-know-who, which comes from a deleted scene with Ron mentioning the possibility of the taboo.
It's taboo, you know whose name. That's how they track people now.
How do you know that?
In the duel, Harry hits Rowell with Stupefy. Dolohov jumps up from behind the bagel counter to fire curses, but on the last one, Hermione realizes, oh, it's just glass. I can blast through it, and she aims for the midsection with Petrificus Totalis. Ron hints at killing them.
So what are we gonna do with you, eh? Kill us if it was turned around, wouldn't you?
If we kill them, they'll know we were here.
Ron.
Suppose you did Mad Eye. How would you feel then?
Now, yes, this is far more bloodthirsty than Ron is in the books, but it is worth noting that Dolohov was one of the 5 Death Eaters who killed Ron's mother's Molly's brothers, Ron's uncles, Gideon and Fabian Pruitt. And Ron says all this while Dolohov isn't stunned or knocked out. Dolohov is just paralyzed. He can hear everything, including how this Weasley kid wants to kill him. Also, on the wall in this cafe, there's a poster for Equus, which Daniel Radcliffe was starring in at the time. Ron touches a bloody spot on Hermione's chin, recalling him pointing to the toothpaste and then the butterbeer foam in Half-Blood Prince. This is like his way of saying, I love you. Hermione mentions a cake that she and Ginny had made for Harry's 17th birthday. In the book, they shape the cake like a golden stitch, which makes Rufus suspicious that Harry might have known what Dumbledore was going to bequeath to him in his will. They go to Grimmauld Place, which Harry inherited after Sirius's death. Moody set up a defense of a dusty, ghostly form of Dumbledore to stop Snape, who knew the secure location from the Fidelius charm from getting in. But we do learn that Snape did get in here. Harry sees Voldemort reprimanding Ollivander because of the false intel on the wand connection. In the book, Harry also sees Voldemort force Draco to torture Rowell for his failure to catch Harry at the cafe. Harry goes into Sirius's bedroom and finds small dragon skeleton figurines and a history of magic textbook written by Bathilda Bagshot. Harry has had that class with Professor Binns for several years, but probably never touched his textbook because that ghost is boring. In the book, Harry finds in this room a letter to Sirius from Lily, along with a torn photo of Harry whizzing around on a toy broom. We later learn that Snape had snuck into Grimmauld Place and tore off half of this photo, though half with Lily in it, along with her signature from the letter. In my opinion, not the best look for Snape, as legally and emotionally, this photo totally belong to Harry. They find Regulus Arcturus Black on the other door, the RAB on the locket note. They also find Creature, and a full chapter in the book tells Creature's tale, with Regulus in the cave, swapping the locket, Regulus getting dragged under by Infuri, and Creature failing to destroy the Horcrux. And pitying and just appreciating Creature's efforts over all this time, Harry gifts Creature Regulus's locket, and Creature pulls a full 180, cooking and cleaning and just respecting the trio. Now, in Deathly Hallows, the elves' performances were accomplished by the voice actors Toby Jones and Simon McBurnley going through the scenes first physically on set, and then the body double stand-ins, Diane Gibbons and Bendy Johal, would act out the scenes trying to match those initial performances, and then that reference would be replaced with the digital creatures in post-production. So that means the elves now occupy the same physical space as the other actors in the scene, and you can totally see it on Radcliffe and the rest, reacting emotionally to them. There's just like a weight to the elves, and all kinds of meaning of weight that exists in this film that wasn't in Chamber of Secrets. Meanwhile, we see Death Eaters stopping the Hogwarts Express, searching for Harry, and Neville proves what a badass he is now.
Hey, losers. He isn't here.
Poor Neville is going to get roughed up by the Death Eaters at Hogwarts throughout this year. The Ministry has fallen to the Death Eaters. Pius Thickness stands before staff, along with Yaxley, now the head of magical law enforcement, along with Dolores Umbridge and Runcorn. As Pius speaks, notice that his hand twitches. While the movie doesn't confirm it explicitly, I think this is a clue that he is, like in the book, under the Imperious Curse during this time. The Daily Prophet now prints that Harry is undesirable #1 with a bounty of 10,000 galleons on his head, the same amount that was placed on Sirius Black. They used the photo where Harry's nose was bloodied up after the Battle of the Ministry, where I guess Harry just looked the most weak. The Fountain of Magical Brethren has been replaced with a new, horrifying statue reading "Magic is Might," showing a large stone crushing muggles beneath it and a wizard and witch back to back on top. There's no centaur, no elf now, just wizards. Its design was influenced by several famous sculptures from Soviet Russia and pre-war Germany and contains 50 handcrafted figures of men, women, and children. But those Soviet and East German statues were meant to show how the proletariat was lifting up and carrying society. Here, they are being crushed. In the book, the statue is a witch and wizard sitting atop a throne made of naked muggle bodies twisted and pressed together, which is even worse. In the crowd is also Reg Cattermole, the guy Ron will later transform into, nervous here because his wife is muggle-born, and Scavier, a snatcher who catches runaway witches and wizards in return for bounties, walks up this bruised and battered man. This is actually Dirk Cresswell, who was part of the Slug Club and worked for the Goblin Liaison Office, who was muggle-born and was caught by Runcorn faking his family tree. In the book, Cresswell escapes and goes on the run with Dean Thomas and Ted Tonks. And I'm gonna bring that up a lot because I think it's so cool that these three randos end up together. Also, at this point in the book, part of the Death Eater takeover includes Hogwarts attendance being made mandatory, with classes now designed for students to prove their magical ability and for Death Eaters to suss out who might be lesser in their eyes or muggle-born, even though that's completely unrelated to magical ability. Dobby and Creature drag Mundungus back to Grimmauld Place. In the book, it's just Creature, but the film needed to reintroduce Dobby since he had been sidelined since Chamber of Secrets. But I like how Creature in the scene seems to be more eager to please Harry in this moment. Just a little fun detail. Hermione disarms Mundungus, and you'll notice for the first time, Expelliarmus flips the disarmed wand back to the other's hand, which will become important in the final duel with Harry and Voldemort. Mundungus says he handed over the locket to Umbridge, and we see an old Daily Prophet, Ministry seeks educational reform, new era dawns at Hogwarts. We actually saw the same paper before in Order of the Phoenix, but now they've added Mafalda Hopkirk next to Dolores. This is the woman that Hermione transforms into later, and they also changed the background of this photo to have the new statue. So they stun Mafalda Hopkirk. This is the witch actually who previously sent Harry the Howler-like notice in Order of the Phoenix, and Reg Cattermole, who works in magical maintenance and whose wife is being interrogated, and investigator Albert Runcorn. They do the audience a favor by having the three actors match the hair color of the trio. Actually, David O'Hara, who plays Runcorn, does an incredibly good job matching Daniel Radcliffe's very specific walking style. Remember, in Order of the Phoenix, Ministry employees happily greeted each other and arrived via various methods. Now everyone has a droll, disciplined manner and takes the same way in through the toilet flues. People scurry away as Harry as Runcorn approaches, similar to how people will avoid Hermione as Bellatrix in part 2. When Yaxley snaps at Ron/Cattermole to make it stop raining in his office or will go harder on his muggle-born wife, Ron panics.
What am I gonna do? My wife's all alone downstairs.
Ron, you don't have a wife.
Right.
While this is just presented as a goofy mix-up, I think Ron gets 10 points for empathy here. And I like how there's the sound of running water as he gets off the lift, a clue to the rain currently pouring down in Yaxley's office. Harry and Hermione luckily run into Umbridge almost immediately, and the chain of the locket is clearly visible around her neck. Umbridge asks Hopkirk if Travers sent her. Travers is the Death Eater who held Ginny at wand point in the Death Chamber in Order of the Phoenix. Harry sees propaganda pamphlets, mudbloods, and the dangers they pose to a perfect pure blood society. The Ministry emblem uses the same shrinking text feature that Umbridge's educational decrees had in Order of the Phoenix. Harry sees Moody's magical eye shoved in Umbridge's door so that she can spy on everyone while they work. In the book, Harry can't bear the thought of her having his eye, so he steals it, and that actually is what alerts everyone that there's an intruder. Later in the forest, Harry buries this eye next to the oldest, most gnarled looking tree he can find to give Moody a somewhat proper burial. Harry causes a diversion using decoy detonators, one of Fred and George's wacky inventions. These aren't known to double themselves as they do here, but I assume Hermione placed a doubling charm on them. Gemino. Umbridge's office has the same decor as her office at Hogwarts. Cat plates, that teacup that definitely has too much sugar in it. In her drawer, some sus books. When Muggles Attack, with a depiction of a Muggle, definitely recalling Nazi propaganda that made monstrous forms out of the groups they considered undesirable. Then Mudbloods and How to Spot Them by Barrett Fay, and The Muggle Conspiracy by Sinistra Lowe. We see she has a file on Arthur Weasley saying blood status pure blood, but with unacceptable pro-Muggle leanings, known member of the Order of the Phoenix. It also lists his security status with the color red and very high risk and says he's being tracked. There's one for Moody with a red X over it, another for Hermione with her whereabouts listed as last seen in the company of undesirable number 1, another for Sirius with a big ol' X through it. Same with Dumbledore's, whose photo gives Harry a little smile, like the photo might be able to see through that Polyjuice potion disguise. Harry and Ron pass officers of wizarding law enforcement dragging away another Muggle-born. Their uniforms include a red armband to connote their ranks, which is also worn by Snatchers, an obvious nod to the Nazi SS. In the courtroom, Dementors circle ominously above, kept at bay by Umbridge's Patronus, a house cat naturally, keeping the Dementors back from Umbridge and the other members of the court. Instead of the full Wizengamot, only a few Death Eaters are observing now, including that bald one who searched the train earlier. We hear the Horcrux screech again.
Wife to Reginald?
Umbridge doesn't seem to hear or even notice it's evil, probably because she's so evil already, there's nothing there to corrupt. Umbridge questions Mary Cattermole's wand as truly coming from Ollivander's, and Harry draws his wand, saying the great callback.
You're lying, Dolores. And one mustn't tell lies. Stupefy!
I love how Umbridge's kitty cat Patronus hisses at Harry in this moment. So they snatch the locket, and they don't leave a replacement fake locket as they do in the book to avoid Horcrux suspicion. And they flee the Dementors, whose CGI hands look creepily photorealistic as they claw at them through the elevator grate. I love how extra Stefan Rodri goes as Ron before the Dementors kiss. And despite being mid-kiss, Harry lets off a powerful Patronus, just showing how natural he is at finding a happy place, even at the darkest of times. In the lobby, Mary gives Reg/Ron a big ol' smooch, not at all worried that her husband's deep voice sounds oddly high right now. Hermione shoots a jealous look here. A Ministry employee snitches on them, likely worried he'll get in trouble for not saying anything. Yaxley chases them, fighting through undesirable flyers that Harry bewitched. Ron gives off an impressive no-look Expelliarmus. They flew out of there, back to Grimmauld Place, but Yaxley has grabbed hold. In the twisty animation, you can briefly see the interior of Grimmauld Place, and Yaxley looking around, followed by Hermione apparating herself and Harry and Ron to the woods near where the Quidditch World Cup was held. But uh-oh, what happened to Ron here?
Ron got splinched!
Ron's been splinched! That?
Been spleeched?
Harry! Ron's been splinched!
It's not totally fair. Emma Watson doesn't do the fry or the fray here. Hermione puts up protection spells, repeating Protego Totalum and Salvia Hexia, which both repel hexes, and then Repello Muggletum, which wards off muggles, and then Muffliato. That was one of Snape's invented spells from Half-Blood Prince that fills people's ears with a muffled sound so you can talk near them without being heard. The tent they go glamping in this movie is actually the same Weasley family tent with the extension charm that they use at the Quidditch Cup and Goblet of Fire, but without all the plush furniture, just really some cots and the bench and the table. They try to destroy the locket. Harry uses Descendium, which is a spell to open a secret door that was actually used on the one-eyed witch statue in Prisoner of Azkaban. I guess Harry wanted to force the locket open and doesn't think to use Parseltongue yet. Hermione uses Incendio, the flame spell. Harry uses Expulso, that's the explosion spell, and then Defendo, which is a severing charm, not Sectum Sempra, but like just one to cut things. And then Reducto, the boom spell that disintegrates things used by Ginny in Order of the Phoenix. And he actually uses that a few more times here in Rage. And really, I just think think he's trying to remember Ginny and how much he misses her. Harry decides to wear the necklace. In the book, Harry describes it as having a sort of heartbeat that he can feel when he wears it. Ron listens on the radio. In the book, there's a Resistance radio broadcast called Potterwatch, hosted by Lee Jordan, codenamed River, as a reference to the River Lee in Ireland and the River Jordan in Israel. Kingsley, Lupin, Fred, George, and others guest on this radio show. We only hear bits and pieces of it in this film. Here they report a goblin named Gornick who was killed, and Muggleborns Dean Thomas, Ted Tonks, and Dirk Cresswell have escaped. Now in the book, Dean, Ted, Dirk, and goblins Gornick and Griphook form what I think is a delightful fivesome of fugitives, and are actually overheard in the book by an unseen Harry, Ron, and Hermione that Ginny, Neville, and Luna tried to steal the Sword of Gryffindor from Snape's office and were sent to the Forbidden Forest to help Hagrid, which, when you think about it, was really just a blessing concealed as a punishment from Snape. The goblins mention that Snape sent the sword to Gringotts, but the goblins say it's a fake, because goblins can always tell. Later, Ted, Dirk, and Gornick are said to have been killed, but Griphook and Dean got captured and taken to Malfoy Manor. We see Griphook there later, but we don't see Dean until Deathly Hallows Part 2 at Hogwarts. Here, the Potterwatch radio show also reports that a Muggle family of 5 was found dead in their home. Touching the locket, it appears to bite Harry as he flashes to visions with Voldemort, the wand maker Gregorovitch, who says the Elder Wand was stolen from him by a young thief. This young thief is Gellert Grindelwald, played by Stranger Things' Jamie Campbell Bower. Hermione has been foraging for food. Now, why doesn't she use magic to create food? Well, they can't do that. Food is one of the 5 principal exceptions to Gamp's law of elemental disfiguration. Food cannot be magicked into existence out of nothing. As Harry snaps at Hermione, the locket screech gets louder, but when he hands it over to her, it goes away. Harry watches Snape's footprints on the Marauders map and the headmaster's office of Hogwarts as the radio reports that under Snape, infractions are dealt with harshly. Outside, Hermione freezes as Scrimgeour and the other Snatchers pass dangerously close. I love the camera work for this shot. As the camera circles them, Emma Watson steps back out of frame, probably behind the camera crew, to make it look like, from Scrimgeour's point of view, there's no one there. But then when the camera circles back around, Emma Watson steps back into frame as if she was standing there the whole time. They add these VFX blurs to show where the camera would be passing through the barrier, and they muffle the Snatcher's audio when we're on Hermione's side. Ron pokes out of the tent to hear this.
Next time, Hermione, as much as I like your perfume, just don't wear any.
In the 6th book, the love potion to Harry smells like Ginny's perfume, so Harry's, again, just missing his favorite smell. The radio lists off some missing witches and wizards: Jason and Allison Denbright, Bella, Jake, Charlie, and Madge Farley, Joe Laurie, Eleanor Sarah Gibbs, Harry and Bronwyn Trigg, Rob and Ellie Dawson, Georgia Clark Day, Joshua Flexen, George Countess, Gabriella and Emily Mather, Jacob and Mimi Erland, William and Brian Gallagher, Katie and James Killick, Elsie Valentine Schroeder, Jennifer Winston, Tamsin and Lola Hilliker, Scarlett and Kitty Sharp. Now, none of these are characters we've heard about before in the books or movies, but they do share last names with many on the film's crew. The locket affects Ron more than the other 2, and as the Horcrux screech reaches a fever pitch, there's this overhead shot of the tent, followed by this abrupt cut to Ron looking downward, recalling one of Stanley Kubrick's transitions in The Shining, of Jack Torrance losing his mind as he watched his wife and son playing in the maze. And at several points, you do see Ron definitely doing the tilted Kubrick face in a lot of shots. Hermione realizes the Sword of Gryffindor can destroy a Horcrux since it's impregnated with basilisk blood. Ron can only see this as another thing for them to find, and much of this argument comes directly from chapter 15 in the book, but Ron in the film is far more paranoid about Harry and Hermione's romantic sparks. Harry in this fight in the book is actually the more paranoid one, about Ron and Hermione whispering behind his back. But really, from Ron, there's really just one line in the scene after Hermione raises a Protego shield to keep Ron from cursing Harry, and she chooses to stay, and Ron says, "I get it, you choose him." That's really it from this argument. But the film changes the line to this.
I get it. I saw you two the other night.
Ron, that's nothing.
And this movie scene blocking makes Ron pretty unlikable. He shoves Hermione, and he shouts this at Harry.
No, you don't know how it feels. Your parents are dead. You have no family.
Yeah, neither of those are from the book. And yeah, this is the Horcrux, but Ron in the book never lets the Horcrux drag him down this much. Him leaving is pretty much entirely motivated by impatience with the mission and fear for his family. But this movie makes a big love triangle out of it. After Ron leaves, they leave a scarf behind and apparate to a new place, and Harry tries to cheer Hermione up with, this. So, the song that they dance to is Nick Cave and the Bad Seeds' 2004 track, Oh Children, with lyrics dwelling on the loss of innocence, but not in the romantic sense, just, children unpacking how they often have to fight adult battles before the train has even left the station. Screenwriter Steve Kloves said that when he read Deathly Hallows, he thought Harry and Hermione might kiss in the tent. But Steve, they didn't. And Emma Watson described this scene as the awkward moment in a co-ed friendship where you think it might be more, but it ends up not being that. Don't get me wrong, I really like raw, organic moments of joy between the the actors in these films. This moment, I think, was just manufactured. Like, it wasn't improvised by the actors, it was like a direction to dance from the script, from the director. And just the fact that it's so heavily edited, it's not like a long take of just the actors goofing around, it's like a highlight reel of the least cringy moments from this dance. So it doesn't feel authentic. I do credit the actors though for playing this with unhinged exhaustion, and then Emma Watson's perfectly timed turn away to non-verbally quash any possibility here. But in the sequence, it does weirdly lead to Harry putting his lips on the snitch to reveal the words, "I open at the close." Harry knows to do this way earlier in the book, right after Scrimgeour leaves the Burrow. Here it almost feels motivated by Harry wanting to smooch something. But the dance scene also seemed to loosen up Hermione's creative thinking as she realizes that the rune on the opening page of Tales of Beedle the Bard wasn't printed on the page, but inked in after the fact, applying some of Harry's Half-Blood Prince margin note thinking. Also, the inner page reads that illustrations to this book were done by Luxo Caruzos, named after Luca Caruso, son of Miraforna Mina, one of the graphic designers who hide them and their friends' names all over these. So they decide to go to Godric's Hollow, and there's this moment.
Hermione.
Don't ever let me give you a haircut again.
I think this is meant to button any possible romantic thing between them, as Hermione's suggesting that the whole fight with Ron started with Hermione giving Harry a haircut. They arrive at Godric's Hollow, and Hermione says that they should have used Polyjuice potion here. They do that in the book, and they learn it's Christmas Eve. They've lost track of time. In the book, they pass by a war memorial first that, when they get closer, transforms into a memorial statue of Harry and his parents. They also see Harry's old house with a plaque out front memorializing what happened there, and trinkets and recent letters wishing Harry luck. Hermione sees the Deathly Hallows symbol on Ignotus Peveril's grave, one of the three brothers from the story. Harry finds his parents' headstones, and written on them is James Potter, born 27th March 1960, died October 31st, 1981. Lily Potter, born January 30th, 1960, died October 31st, 1981. And the quote, "The last enemy that shall be destroyed is death." As the camera pans around Harry and Hermione comforting one another, suddenly we notice Bathilda Bagshot. A fly buzzes around her. Since this is a rotting skin of a woman being puppeted by a snake. Inside Bathilda's house, Harry has to ignite the match for her since Nagini can't work the puppet fingers. Harry spots a photo of Grindelwald, her great nephew. Bathilda does not speak while Hermione's present because Hermione would know immediately that she's speaking Parseltongue and be like, let's get out of here. Hermione finds a copy of Rita Skeeter's book with the note, "Dear Batty, thanks for your help. You said everything, even if you don't remember." And that's because Rita took advantage of Batty Bathilda's dementia and used Verita serum on her. Once upstairs, Nagini, Bathilda, asks in Parseltongue, "Are you Potter?" And Harry responds that he is. In the book, she relays that information to Voldemort, who tells her to hold Harry there until he arrives. And it's pretty crazy to consider that with Nagini and Harry and the locket around his neck in the shot, these are 3 Horcruxes and really half of Voldemort's remaining soul, all within a few feet of each other. Next is a truly disturbing sequence as Bathilda's corpse skin implodes. You can actually see more in the mirror behind Harry. Bathilda's head snaps back to abruptly open the neck hole for the snake to slither out of. Nagini strikes and busts through the wall into a weirdly overly lit child's nursery. This is creepy. The overhead light swings back and forth in an homage to Psycho. I assume Bathilda lived in a terrace and shared a wall with a neighboring family, but psychologically for Harry, he's back in his childhood nursery where he saw his mother die. They fight off the snake and apparate to the Forest of Dean. Harry's wand is broken, depriving Harry of what he thinks is his one edge over Voldemort, their twin wand cores. In the book, Voldemort had arrived to Bathilda's house right before they apparate, and he is furious that Harry had evaded him again, right down the street from where he got him the first time. Harry also knows that Voldemort saw the same photo of Grindelwald and must know who stole the wand from Grigorovich. Hermione shows Harry the photo of young Albus with young Gellert in Rita's book under a chapter titled The Greater Good. The 2 young men would sign letters to each other with this phrase, and Grindelwald would obsess over it when he wreaked havoc. Harry looks at the broken mirror piece and sees nothing, and then just lets it fall, ready to give up hope. But the Patronus of a doe appears. In Prisoner of Azkaban, Harry thought his father had sent the stag Patronus, but the doe Patronus belonged to his mother, Lily. But of course, it's another twist revealed later. This was really sent by Snape, whose Patronus changed to a doe after Lily died. This doe leads Harry to a frozen lake, and he sees the sword of Gryffindor at the bottom. Now, the whole sword in the lake premise is a well-trod territory in fantasy stories. King Arthur was given Excalibur by the Lady of the Lake. Harry can't call the sword to him here because he needs to prove himself first. Harry does try Acio's sword. It just kind of glimmers at him bath, Harry polar bears in, and the Locket, sensing something that can kill it, tries to drown Harry. But Harry's rescued by Ron, and Ron Weasley retrieves the sword. In the book, Harry had kept hearing someone calling out his name and realizes now that it was Ron trying to find them through Hermione's protection spells around their camp. Harry tells Ron to destroy the Horcrux, and he opens it using Parseltongue, the same way he opened the Chamber of Secrets. It flips open, showing a pale blue eye, the eye of Tom Riddle. And I love this wide shot of it suddenly exploding in an inky, cloudy mess. Tom Riddle's voice taunts Ron with his fears and his anxieties. Crawling spiders, least loved by a mother who craved a daughter, least loved by the girl who preferred his friend. Harry shouts, "Ron, kill it!" I love how the cloud just swats Harry away. Like, not now. While the Riddle Harry and the Riddle Hermione do match the descriptions and dialogue in the book, revealing a genuine anxiety from Ron that he could lose Hermione to the chosen one Harry. Really, again, in the book, it's just really conflated with like Molly Weasley preferring Harry as a son to Ron. It's really just more about Ron feeling unwanted rather than being a jealous lover. Also, Yates and Cloves take the description of Riddle Hermione and Riddle Harry kissing in chapter 9, the 3 words their lips met, and they heighten it so that they're naked here. They were not naked in the book. Reportedly, when they shot this, Daniel Radcliffe was shirtless, Emma Watson was wearing a strapless bra, and both actors were covered in silver body paint, and Daniel said that Emma was, quote, like an animal. I suppose the idea is to give any Harmony shippers out there the kiss they wanted, but to just make it real grotesque. Ron charges in with the sword, and as in the book, Harry thinks for a second that Ron is coming for him with the sword, but Ron smashes a Horcrux. In the last second, you can see Riddle's panicked eye before the screech is silenced. Ron explains that he tried to find them from the moment he left, and finally heard Hermione's voice come from the Deluminator from the first time she said his name aloud after he left them. I assume Dumbledore got this idea because he was there in the infirmary in Half-Blood Prince to see how important it was for Hermione to hear Ron say her name, Hermione. So he coded the Deluminator to give that gift back to Ron. Ron saw the tiny ball of light, and it went inside of him, and when he apparated, it brought him here to the Forest of Dean. Ron gives Harry the spare wand that he took off a snatcher. Hermione points out another part of Rita's book, a letter from Albus to Gellert about for the greater good being for the Muggles' own good, and we can see the last part on screen here. This was your mistake at Durmstrang, but I do not complain, because if you had not been expelled, we would not have met. Albus uses the Deathly Hallows symbol to form the A of its name. They visit Xenophilius Lovegood. You can actually see a thestral painted on the outside of the house, and they see a sign that reads, "Keep off the dirigible plums." These are the orange radish-like fruit that Luna designed for her earrings to look like. The Lovegoods believe that dirigible plums enhance one's ability to accept the extraordinary, and in Xenophilius' house, he has a stone bust of Rowena Ravenclaw and attempted to recreate her lost diadem out of these plums. You can actually see that bust in this shot. It's partially what inspires Harry to realize the final Horcrux later in Hogwarts. In part 2 of the movie, Luna's like, "It's the lost diadem, of course." You can see pages from the Quibbler on the wall with headlines, "Funny old wizarding world, Raxperts break out at Ministry, Elfin safety inquiry," and they spell inquiry with E-N, like the British tabloid, The Inquirer. "Ginger Witch sent to Azkaban," that's like the running joke of the Ginger Witch that Mina Lima put throughout these movies. "Left is the new right, existing Wizengamot, lose credibility." Then Yeti footprints, true sightings or another prank. Wizarding genealogists debate, mud or blood, and a brilliant discovery, new constellation named Bartholomeus. Hermione reads from the Tales of Beetle the Bard, the tale of the 3 brothers. It begins with Xenophilius sending a crow, likely to alert the Death Eaters, and a crow's feather drifts into a puddle to take us into this animated world. It is so cool. Framestore spent 6 months animating this sequence inspired by shadow puppetry and wooden marionettes. This story being cast as shadows on a candlelit canvas makes it feel like this is a story perhaps being told by Death himself from the other side of the veil. And Death is really like the enlightened philosopher king in Plato's allegory of the cave, using shadows to project incomplete representations of a greater reality we're unable to see. The Peverell brothers cheat Death by crafting a bridge to cross a treacherous river. The Death puppet resembles the twisted knots of a dead tree, the knuckles of his thin fingers resembling the notches of the Elder Wand. The Elder Wand is a gift to the first brother. The second brother asks for a stone to bring people back from the dead, the Resurrection Stone. The third brother is already sneaking up on Death, hiding behind him, and asks for a way to avoid Death, and Death cuts off a piece of his own cloak, the invisibility cloak. This animation has just some really cool transitions, a vertical line representing the Elder Wand turned into the candle wick on the night of Antioch's murder, and then the light from the door as the second brother Cadmus finds his resurrected love, and her dress sparkles just like the invisibility cloak / the cloak of Death, showing how even her return was really an illusion by Death, who reels up the second brother on his noose like a marionette. The story ends with the third brother successfully hiding from Death his whole life, passing the cloak down to his son and surrendering to death as they fly away together as equals. Actually, fun fact, in French, Voldemort translates roughly to the flight of death or theft of death. These three brothers were, of course, Antioch Peverell, the first brother, Cadmus Peverell, the second brother, and Ignotus Peverell, the third brother. Ignotus Peverell's bloodline led to James Potter and Harry, the invisibility cloak, passing from father to son. Cadmus, it seems, didn't have direct descendants, obviously, because he took his own life, but since the Resurrection Stone ends up in the Gaunt family ring, it's believed that Tom Riddle's ancestry was tied to Cadmus in some way, in addition to being descended directly from Salazar Slytherin. Xenophilius draws the 3 runes for each hallow to create the symbol. Harry visibly shakes as he draws a triangle for the invisibility cloak, as he realizes that for the past several years of his life, he has been draping himself in death's own cape. Harry asks who took Luna and Xenophilius instead of saying the Death Eaters, decides he needs the Death Eaters to be here immediately, and says the word Voldemort, triggering the taboo jinx and summoning them here right away. So they apparate away out of the explosions and run right into Snatchers, including Xavier and Fenrir Greyback. In the book, it's not an unlucky apparition. Harry accidentally says Voldemort again, heated up by the fear of the Elder Wand, and Ron confirms the taboo jinx is real, but it's too late. Here, they run for it. The camera team used a hands-free camera on a wire, giving us these pretty sleek wide shots zipping past the actors. But between this and the straight-up bombing of the Lovegood house, Yates clearly felt he needed more heightened action to climax part 1. But logically, it doesn't make sense. The blind bombing made no sense if the goal was to capture Harry alive, and here, the trio totally could hide behind some trees and take out some or all of these doofy Snatchers in a shootout. They're good duelers. They kept up with some Death Eaters in the Ministry, and there was a whole battle with Death Eaters in Hogwarts in the Half-Blood Prince book. Ron gets tripped up by an Incarcerous curse. Hermione hits Harry with a stinging jinx to disguise his face. Harry has a vision of Voldemort finding Grindelwald in Nurmengard. That's a prison Gellert built to hold his enemies, and he was imprisoned in it later in his life. In the book, Gellert refuses to say where the Elder Wand is, no longer fearing death. Here, he says the wand is with him, referring to Dumbledore. And we remember how the Chocolate Frog card told us Albus beat Gellert in 1945. That's when the transfer happened. And in this moment, Voldemort recalls his duel with Dumbledore in the Ministry. And this flashback is very important because Voldemort is realizing that Dumbledore could have beaten him then, but Dumbledore held back for a couple reasons: to protect Harry, and because Dumbledore must have known that beating Voldemort in the duel would not have killed Voldemort because Voldemort backed up his soul on external horde drives. And therefore, Voldemort, as of this moment, knows that Dumbledore, and therefore Harry, knows about the Horcruxes. And that's why we next see Dumbledore with that Elder Wand using fire to fight the Infiltrating in the cave, which was a Harry memory, not a Voldemort memory. So now Voldemort is putting 2 and 2 together that they knew about the Horcrux locket. Also, if this Gellert Grindelwald actor looks familiar, Michael Byrne played Colonel Vogel in Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. Remember, the Nazi with no ticket. Harry gives the fake name of Vernon Dudley, using Muggle names that he hopes they won't know. Hermione says that she's Penelope Clearwater, who is Percy's secret girlfriend in Chamber of Secrets. As in the early shot, we smoke apparate back to Malfoy Manor. Draco is hesitant to identify Harry, fearing his role in the shifting balance of power and seeing a Hogwarts teacher devoured on his family's dining table. Harry is counting on Draco having more forgiveness for him after a Sectum Sempra than Harry ever had for Draco. Bellatrix loses it when she sees Gryffindor's sword. As we said before, the one interpersonal vault is a fake, but really she's just terrified that her vault, and therefore the Hufflepuff cup inside of it, is not secure, and that she will suffer the same humiliation that Lucius Malfoy got when he lost a Horcrux. Her reaction here is actually what tips off the trio that she must have a Horcrux in there. Narcissa and Wormtail take Harry and Ron to the cellar, where they find Luna and Griphook and Ollivander. In the first film, Griphook was physically portrayed by Vern Troyer and voiced by Warwick Davis. Here, Davis plays the role fully. While in the book, Bellatrix tortures Hermione with Crucio, here she carves mudblood on her arm, and we see a single hair floating in front of Hermione. This is the one that she will use in part 2 for the Polyjuice potion to transform into Bellatrix. Harry looks into the mirror shard for help, and he sees someone who ends up sending Dobby. In part 2, we learn this is Aberforth. Wormtail fetches Griphook to question him about the sword. In the book, Harry tells Griphook to lie and say that it's a fake. The sword is goblin made, and goblins' ownership customs say that when they make an item for someone, once that person dies, ownership should revert back to the goblin who made it. So they kind of form a deal with Griphook that he can get the sword back. Dobby apparates Luna and Ollivander to Bill and Fleur's cottage. Wormtail returns and he gets KO'd, which is a bummer. In the book, Wormtail starts to strangle Harry, who reminds him that he spared his life back in Prisoner of Azkaban, and Wormtail hesitates, and his silver hand, which was enchanted by Voldemort, turns on Wormtail, strangling himself, which ties up a loose end from Dumbledore telling Harry that by sparing Wormtail, the man would now owe him. Ron disarms Bellatrix, Harry stupefies Lucius, and then Harry duels Draco, while Ron duels Narcissa. Bellatrix grabs Hermione, and she very clearly orders Draco to pick up their wands. A very important detail, because in the chaos that follows, Harry wrestles that wand out of Draco's hand, technically disarming him. And because Draco disarmed Dumbledore of the Elder Wand on the Astronomy Tower, Draco, during that time, was was the rightful owner to the Elder Wand, and now Harry, by disarming Draco of any wand, makes Harry the rightful owner of the Elder Wand, which is why Voldemort is later unable to defeat Harry in the duel with the Elder Wand. Dobby drops the chandelier, unleashing one last stroke of chaos like he did in the Dursley house. Dobby declares himself a free elf to Bellatrix and apparates the group out of there, but not before Bellatrix's dagger zips right into the mix. And Dobby's death is shattering. The photorealism the artists were able to achieve with Dobby's skinny legs reflecting in the wet sand and his increasingly pale flesh as he smiles up at Harry. The fact that they had Toby Jones on set before Diane Gibbons was able to step in totally pays off the weight of this moment.
Dobby is happy to be with his friend.
Harry Potter.
Rowling ends chapter 23 describing Dobby's final moment this way, quote, "His eyes were nothing more than great glassy orbs sprinkled with light from the stars they could not see." And later when Harry buries him, he carves a headstone that reads, "Here lies Dobby, a free elf." At the end of Chamber of Secrets, Harry had asked Dobby to promise him to never try to save his life again, and Dobby smiled. Dobby paid the ultimate price here for breaking that promise. The final scene of this part 1 film shows us a moment that was only talked about in the book, Voldemort robbing Dumbledore's grave for the Elder Wand. In the book, Dumbledore's white tomb is located on the shores of the lake on the Hogwarts grounds. Here we see the tomb on a small island shot at Scotland's Aelion Namoin. I'm so sorry, I know I mispronounced that. It's a very cool looking lake with trees on it, and they actually also used shots of this lake for Buckbeak's flight in Prisoner of Azkaban. The tall trees on this island make a very cool visual as Voldemort uses the Elder Wand, which is just some great wordplay by Rowling. Elder meaning older than all other wands, but elder is also, a type of tree, and he fires a triumphant bolt into the sky as we cut to black. But Voldemort is wrong to assume that grave robbing is any kind of victory. His kleptomania of trinkets and relics betray him. The relic on the island he should have been worried about was the locket in the cave, and that is a battle he lost decades ago, because his defeat will not come from one boy who stands up to him, but the countless others who stand with that boy and delivered a death by 1,000 cuts he was too arrogant to see. So we are going to hold off from our Room of Requirement section until we finish part 2 of Deathly Hallows next week. A huge thank you to Gina Ippolito for helping to research and write this breakdown. Comment down below with your thoughts. Follow me at EA Voss. Subscribe to all 3 channels of the New Rockstars Network for breakdowns, news coverage of everything you love. Also, please hit that join button if you want to support us through a channel membership. Thanks for watching. Mischief managed.